Alright, so we're in the middle of February, basically midwinter, and according to the weather reports, last night was supposedly to be uh, the last coldest night, 36 degrees for the foreseeable future. From here on is basically upper 40s and 50s, and the girls, as you can see, are very active. Um, First, let me address a lot of the comments that came out of the installation video, which there's always a lot of discussion around that, right? And a lot of people asking for data and scientific studies and stuff like that. There is a few. I'm going to put some links on the bottom because I do not have scientific studies. Um, I have a background in HVAC and air conditioning contracting, and so I'm trying to use what I know on heat loss calculations and calculating the heat loss in houses to calculate the size of the correct equipment and all that stuff. So, you always try to apply what you know. In any case, if you're looking for scientific documentations and all that, I have a couple of links underneath. And another beekeeper that I want to become friends with because she is very nice person, very helpful to everybody. I see that she's a very helpful person. She saw the video and she gave me this book. She asked me if I have read this book, The Lives of Bees by Dr. Seeley, because Dr. Seeley actually did some studies of the things that I will be talking about with insulations and all the stuff. The whole chapter 9 is dedicated to the temperature control of the bees and their natural settings and the studies. So I was in another video, the last video that I was talking about the damage, the genetic damage that we've done, or the damage that we do to the bees by putting them in the wrong containers. And I was talking that I seriously believe that if the bee is an insect that has a very specific range to rear their brood, 93 to 96, anything above or below might be damaging physiological to the bees. Dr. Seeley here in the third chapter, he's talking about exactly that, and how he noticed that bees that were reared in different temperatures were not good at foraging. 40% to be precise is what he reported. 40% in the foraging capabilities. So that's all that I wanted to say in regards to that. What I want to talk about now is that at least here in Texas, the temperatures for the rest of the winter are going to be in the 50s, 40s, and actually the winter that just passed is a little bit problematic because it was a warm winter with only a few days, a series of 3 to 4 cold days here and there, and so the bees were very active. And so the concern is feeding. So there's storage levels that they have because they've been so active, and there's nothing outside on the winter, right? So the two things that I want to say is, one, you got to feed with a purpose. Don't feed just because commercial beekeepers or somebody on Tennessee or Ohio or Florida or California are feeding. Don't just go and do it just because, just mind. If you have the chance to have good temperatures, like today is going to be 77, I believe, or on the 70s. So I'm going to check. I'm going to check these hives, how they're doing on resources. And I have some one-to-one ready because I'm going to put some frames for them to draw. So I have two Cornulans and I have two Caucasians here. And so colonies are known, or because of the early swarming tendencies as well as the Russians. So one is I need to mind the storage because, as you can see, they're bringing pollen like there's no tomorrow right now. So I need to see a space. Now that they're brooding a lot, I got to see the amount of resources that they have. And so I'm doing one-to-one for the ones that I'm putting a lot of empty frames for them to draw out, right? So the one-to-one is to incentive those comb building. But again, the point is feed with a purpose. Commercial beekeepers have different needs, pollination needs. They need to increase the amount of bees because they're going to sell bees. They're going to sell nukes. They're going to sell packages. So they have an incentive to get the bees to build up faster. So they will feed. They will do all these things that, as a backyard beekeeper, hobbyist, you don't need to do. And you can create more problems for you if you're just doing it out of the blind. So if I follow a commercial beekeeping and I start feeding, they're going to swarm fast. They're doing it because they need to make splits earlier and all that stuff, right? I don't have that rush. And if I feed too much and if stimulate too much, the other problem that's going to happen is this. I do not know in your area where you are if this is a common issue. But here in Texas, in the Houston area, we have what I call a false spring. So in January, we already have something blooming, some trees blooming, right? And so January and February, we have some blooms, and that's what's going on. So all the bees get all crazy like that, and they start brooding. And some of the hives already have 3 frames of brood, and so they start to react to the environment and multiply. But then, in between from here to the middle of March, that's not going to happen. We're going to have a drought. Some of the pollen is just going to stop coming, and so the bees went nuts multiplying, and now we're going to face 3 to 4 weeks of nothing, so they're going to starve. So that is the issue. So right now my concern is I mind where they're bringing, in the sense of how much pollen, how much brooding they're going to get, how many frames of brood they're going to have, because I need to make sure that they're going to be ready from here until the real spring comes to play. And so one of the things that I will do is equalize the colonies. So I don't want one that has 2 deeps and a medium, and right next to it I have a nuke with 2 boxes. The other one is 2 deeps, and the other one is just 1 deep. And in the other yards, I have ones that are just 1 deep, and similar situation. So one of the things is equalizing, because if the strongest hives, as soon as the strongest hives knows that there's nothing in the environment, they have more scouts, they have more resources in terms of numbers to come here and decimate the little ones. So they're going to go nuts and going to try to steal all they have, and they're going to kill the colony. So again, that's one of the problems that you're creating yourself. So some of the things is check the resources, equalize bees, equalize resources, and remember, not all the years are exactly the same. Last year, But this time I have excess of honey in pretty much all the colonies. Some have mediums that they hardly even touched. Now, because of the winter was so warm this time, most of the colonies are running out of resources. Some of the ones that went into winter with two deeps. So last week I was like, okay, so this weekend is going to be the last cold spell. I need to get ready with all the equipment, provide them space. This is the first time that I'm overwintering true Carniolans and Russians. So I want to get ahead of the game, and I want to be ready with the equipment, like a NASCAR tire crew, just go, right? And I went there with a bunch of equipment, and I end up bringing, actually, I end up bringing equipment back because the ones that were in two deeps, they were all up on the second deep with brood and some honey on their side, and the bottom a whole deep with nothing, just all the 10 frames drone comb empty, no pollen, no honey, no nothing. Thank God that the wax moth is not actually multiplying right now, because otherwise they will take over and they'll destroy all those resources, those beautiful drone combs. So I actually went there with a bunch of equipment and actually came back with 3 deeps full of drone comb, empty, completely empty. And so again, feed with a purpose. What is the purpose? Not let them starve. That's it. Don't overfeed, because if you are promoting brood breeding in an environment that is not producing anything, what is going to end up happening is you're going to create some monsters that are well populated and going to go outside trying to check other weaker hives, and they're going to decimate those hives. So you're creating your own problem in that sense. If you overfeed and you create bigger populations, and then suddenly everything and the environment stops for a few weeks, you're in trouble. Now you have to feed regardless. And the idea is, beekeeping is already an expensive hobby. It is expensive, and one of my goals is I don't want to feed. Sugar keeps going up in price, and I don't want to buy any more sugar. So I leave and make sure that I leave enough honey for them for winter. I also have a bunch of frames. Right now I have about 60 frames with honey, deeps with honey, not completely full of honey. Some that are a half frame of honey, some honey, like on the sides where the brood were. So I do save a lot of honey. So I have some frames here. I'm going to check if they already spent all the honey and they have 2 frames of honey. I'm going to put an extra frame of honey or 2 just for them to keep going. The ones that I'm going to use to draw comb, I'm going to feed with 1-to-1. So for example, this deep is 8 frames. So I'm going to have 4 frames drawn out frames and 4 empty frames, kind of a checkerboarding, and feed them 1-to-1 so they can actually draw those, right? And I'm going to keep doing that with a few of the most populated colonies. But and this is because this 2 here I use this bees here in my house to rear queens. So that's why they're here. So I use them a lot to for the queen rearing. Here in my house I have a better control of the schedule. They're right here. I can observe everything that's going on. So these are my girls. This is my favorite queen right here, my babies. And so again, feed with a purpose. For example, a month ago and in December and a month ago I was putting some pollen substitute because there was nothing there and I want them to keep going, give them some protein, right? And so they were eating it like crazy. I refilled it a couple of times. Now 3 weeks ago, almost a month ago, I put this last one, and they haven't even touched it, because for the last 3 weeks they've been finding real pollen. So some people say don't feed because don't open feed because this and this and this. Sugar, they most likely always go for it, always. Pollen substitute, they will ignore it. They will ignore the pollen substitute if the real thing is around. So like this pollen substitute is already stale, so that is done. But that tells me that the girls are getting some real pollen for them, and that's really good. All right, so that's about feeding. Check the weight. Get used to the weight of the hives. If you got a good memory, you start learning. You keep it in your mind each hive how it's doing, stuff like that, or keep notes. And that's it. But just don't feed because everybody's feeding. Don't buy. So like right now, right? If I feed pollen potties, all that I'm doing by feeding pollen potties right now is creating problems for the girls. They're not gonna touch it. They're not gonna eat it because they're already bringing tons and tons of pollen. What I'm doing is giving an opportunity to a small hive beetle that is about to start multiplying again for them to, actually put some babies in it. I seen like 2-3 hive beetles here and there through the winter, and so they don't go away. And if you put a pollen potty, the hive beetles is the one that are gonna use it, not the bees. Now sugar breaks all the stuff. Right now, if you put sugar in it, with the temperatures that are right now, for them it's just something to clean up. So yes, it's gonna disappear from the hives, but they're just taking the trash out. So right now, you gotta feed with a purpose, only for the colonies that need it. Keep control of the big populations, equalize, so you don't make, so you avoid yourself some headaches. And so right now I'm gonna check, I'm gonna see the girls, I'm gonna feed the ones that I'm gonna use to draw some comb. And in general, I'm gonna see if they need some feeding, I will. If they're not, they're not getting any.